This is a 2013 Volkswagen Jetta TDI, and the customer's concern is he tried to start it and tried to start it repeatedly, and sometimes it'll barely turn over and sometimes it just clicks. Now, a no start problem is pretty easy to diagnose. He was thinking starter, and he was jump starting it and trying to get it to start, because sometimes it doesn't turn over at all. Now, recently we had a very cold snap, like negative 10 degrees. It very rarely gets in the negative here in the Kansas City area, but we had a cold snap, and this was the nationwide snowstorm where Texas lost power and all that stuff. I'm sure everybody heard about it on the news. Anyway, it was cold, negative 10 degrees. These late model TDIs have a problem with what's called intercooler icing, and the scenario is something like the intercooler works really well, so the hot plus cold equals condensation, condensation equals water inside the bottom of the intercooler. Just sits there, not necessarily a problem most of the time. Water going into the intake tract and into the cylinders is a bad thing on a diesel, or any engine for that matter. I had a Dodge Caravan one time that my wife drove into a river, and it hydrolocked the piston, bent a rod. The rod was shaped like that, like a C after she was done with that. And so the point is that water intrusion in any cylinder is a problem. Whether or not this is the problem on this car, I don't know, but I wanted to talk about intercooler icing. And we had a rabbit in here the other day that had that problem. So anyway, intercooler icing happens, water condensation happens inside the intercooler, and the worst problem that can happen is it develops in there in enough quantity to pass into the cylinder and hydrolock the piston. And then the customer or some unknowing mechanic keeps trying to start it, keeps trying to start it. They're putting the boost pack on the battery. Maybe they've replaced the starter, and they keep trying to start it, and they keep trying to start it. And sometimes it'll turn over. It'll go wah 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 wah, and then stop. And that stop is the hydrolock. And that if the starter's good and powerful and the battery's boosted, has the ability to bend the rod or do other types of damage. So knowing that these problems exist, when we get these cars in there, we try not to start them. We did try and start this one. It went wah 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 and stopped. Unfortunately, we hadn't had enough foresight. The customer didn't explain it real well. We didn't know it was an intercooler icing problem. But anyway, so what we've experienced was one attempt to start, it went wah 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 and stopped. And so that's where we're at right here. And what we're going to do is, number one, pull the intercooler pipes to see if any water comes out. Now, that's not 100% conclusive, because that water, we're assuming it's in the cylinder. But if some water comes out, then we kind of know it has an intercooler icing problem. The second thing we're going to do is we're going to pull the glow plugs, and we're going to crank the engine with the glow plugs removed, and that's going to push any water out. The piston's coming up will push any water out the glow plug holes, and after that, it should start. Now, like I said, I don't know what this problem is. There's a chance this is just a fuel gelling problem, and I'm completely wasting my time here trying to make this video. Let's pull the intercooler pipes and see what's going on. In case you need to know, we pulled this car in. We didn't drive it in. All the screws missing on this side of the cover. Now, I hope I got the light good enough to where you can see water coming out if water comes out. Obviously that's an intercooler icing problem. Now we're going to check the pipe on the other side. And obviously a little bit of water came out of that one also. Okay, so there's all the water that came out of it. And all I'm going to do really is drain it out. Small quantity of water that stays in the bottom of the intercooler isn't a problem. A large quantity of water that fills it up enough to where that water is drawn in with the suction of the engine or the boost pressure to go into the intake is a problem. So I'm just going to put the clip back in position, pop this one back on. And then do the same on the other side. Now let's lower it down and pull the glow plugs. Point out that some of these harnesses are already broken, probably from a glow plug change previously in this car's life, but I like using these pliers right here to disconnect CR glow plugs. CR meaning 2009 and newer. And if you get a little gentle tug and you're careful, you won't break the plastic like somebody did on these. There's that one disconnected. And unfortunately, these ones that are broken are kind of going to be a problem. Oh, that one came out. That one came out. Don't like tugging on the wires, but that's what I had to do because they're broken. Now these, they don't really give you enough wire to clear these out. So you kind of have to stretch the wires sometimes to get them clear. I'll kind of show you what we're dealing with here. The glow plugs are down inside there. All four of them are down inside those holes. And it takes a deep well socket, but a snap-on deep well won't work. A snap-on deep well has that step inside there, and it just won't go over this one. You have to have one without that step, and luckily I got my old Craftsman with no step in it. That one's a little stiff. Threads may be a little boogered on that one. We have had a few of these, and the older ones too, that the threads are damaged when you remove them. Seems like a good preventive measure might be to take the glow plugs out every 50,000 miles just to make sure, but then again, if you're going to have a problem, you probably don't want to take them out because you might have a problem. Try a magnet, but I don't think a magnet works on these. Nope. Reach down in there with our needle nose and pull the glow plug out. You always want to look at the tips real close, make sure the tip didn't break off and end up in the cylinder. And that one's wet. I don't know if it's coming across on the camera, but it's definitely wet. You can probably see a drip on the end of my finger there. No broken tips. There's some roughness to the threads there. There's some aluminum stuck in the threads there of the glow plug, meaning it was kind of seized in the head, and when I removed it, it pulled some of the threads out. But it wasn't that bad. I've seen them worse where they survived that. Now I'm going to go crank over the engine, and probably we're going to see some water shoot out of there. Now, this thing is injecting diesel fuel into the cylinder, so you'll see some diesel fuel come out also. So it's kind of hard to tell what's diesel fuel and what's water, but in the video anyway. But here we'll see traces of the water if it comes out. Let's crank it over. I don't know how well that came across on camera, but it shot water all the way up to my lights up there. All the way up to my lights. And it was very, very thick when it first came out. A lot of fine mist of particles, meaning water. And then when I was done clearing it, it was just a fine mist, and that's probably the diesel fuel being injected in. So we're going to get those glow plugs back in and see if this engine survived this event. And I'm trying to show you the water across the top of this. This is water that came out of it right here. I don't know how in the video we can differentiate that it's water or diesel fuel, but that's definitely water. Once again, getting these hooked back in here is always an event of stretching the wires. Wish they made those things just a little bit longer. Obviously, us cranking the engine with the glow plugs disconnected will trigger glow plug trouble codes and cylinder pressure sensor trouble codes, because the cylinder pressure sensor is built into the glow plugs. But we'll clear those out afterwards if it starts. All right, let's see if this thing starts. Glow plug cycle. Good. I'm going to get VACCOM hooked to it and scan it and clear any trouble codes that I triggered. Look for trouble codes that might be there from other stuff. Hopefully this engine survived the hydrolock event. I want to reinforce that the customer tried repeatedly to start this over the course of several days, if I remember right, based on what he said. I have some more information for you after I clear the codes. Here's my new hex net from VACCOM. I put these on it so it won't get left in the customer's car. It's really nice because you can plug in and do it wirelessly. Okay, we need to go in here and get these codes cleared. And it's not communicating. And the reason it's not communicating, I'm using the hex net, and that's wireless. is because the last time we used this, we were using a wired connection. And so whenever you, well, let me show you what we have is we have a micro CAN VAGCOM, and that'll only communicate with cars with a CAN bus. And we have a hex CAN, and that'll communicate with cars with a K line or a CAN bus, basically any car. But there is some stuff this won't do because they updated it to the hex. We used to have 2 of these, but one of them left in a customer's car. I don't know whether it was me or one of the employees who left it in the customer's car, and it's gone bye-bye and never came back. But the reason we have 3 of these is because sometimes you have 2 employees who want to do something with VAGCOM at the same time. Not because we need all of these or anything, but so in order to make it connect after using it cabled, we just simply go back, hit the options button, switch it to the net, and then test. And once it tests okay, then you can connect wirelessly. And you can see there that says port status okay, interface found. So then you save that right there. And now we can go in and check the engine trouble codes. And manifold boost sensor. I don't know why that would be there. Altitude sensor, boost pressure sensor. Cylinder 1 glow plug, pretty sure I triggered that. Cylinder 3, so scrolled past it. Cylinder 2 glow plug, cylinder 3 glow plug, and cylinder 4 glow plug. So I'm going to save these because I didn't know those manifold and boost sensor trouble codes were in there. And we'll save that, and then we'll clear those out so we can road test the car and make sure this engine isn't damaged. Okay, we just returned from the road test, and during the road test I heard a hiss noise. Made me think like a boost leak maybe, and then the glow plug light started flashing and I had significant loss of power. So I would assume that maybe the boost related trouble codes reoccurred. We'll scan it and see. I'm still connected with wireless, so I'm going to scan this outside the vehicle. And hopefully this reconnected when I got back in the ship, pulled back in, and it seems to have. Boost pressure regulation, control range not reached. Just 2 instances of the same code. So we need to look for a boost leak. I hope one of the pipes that I just worked on didn't pop apart. Well, I pulled the bottom cover and re-inspected, and the pipes have not come off. So I don't know exactly what's going on yet, but we will, I guess, hook a smoke machine to it and try and find our boost leak. Okay, after draining the intercooler and clearing the water from the cylinders on this 2013 Jetta, we did end up with a trouble code relating to boost. And just so you know, as I was road testing the car, I did hear like a whiz noise, and then it lost all boost and the light started flashing. I haven't driven it thoroughly to confirm that problem reoccurs over and over again, but I made some basic checks, and at this point the customer doesn't want to pay anymore. He thinks that the intercooler icing problem will be covered under the Volkswagen warranty, and I think it should. He thinks that Volkswagen should install the cold weather fix that kind of solves the intercooler icing problem. and maybe they will, but he also thinks that since this is an engine performance problem, that this should be covered under the Dieselgate warranty. So he is going to take this to the Volkswagen dealership for further repairs, now that he knows it was an intercooler icing problem. And I'm good with that. I want the customer to do what's best for them. Money is important, and if they can go there and get it fixed for free, that's definitely better than paying me to do it. Now, I want to talk about the intercooler icing problem because it can present itself in multiple different ways. See, I got this car at least a week and a half after the cold snap. The water was still in the intercooler, of course. The water was still in the cylinders, but the way it might have presented is if there was enough water and it was frozen, it would block off the airflow to the engine. So in that situation, the engine will crank over but not start. Now, that's scenario number one. That's what I would call intercooler icing. Now, I've been calling this problem intercooler icing, but it probably should be called intercooler condensation, because the water's there whether it freezes or not. So it's not necessarily intercooler icing. But the second way that it could present itself is by the engine not turning over, by the starter not working. In this situation, do-it-yourselfer or someone who isn't thorough in their diagnosis might put a starter on the car because the engine won't turn over. Or maybe they'll continue charging the battery or put a boost box on it trying to get the engine to turn over, because you'll turn the starter and maybe it'll just go click. Now, I also think that it could probably turn over one or two times, like wah, 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 and then stop, or maybe even try and start and shake and hesitate and then stop. Depends on where the water is, what cylinder it goes in. But the point is that all these scenarios with water in the cylinder can damage things. I've seen pictures on the internet where people go to pull their, they have a no-start problem, and they pull the intercooler pipes and pull bananas. They look like bananas because the intercooler pipes are curved or turned, and they pull out bananas of frozen ice. And so that's one way. Then the last thing I want to point out is what this could do to a shop that didn't know what they were doing. Let's say the customer had an intercooler icing problem and the car didn't start, and then they tow it to a shop. The shop, of course, brings it inside where it's warm, and then the ice thaws out, and now you have water. So the customer might have a crank no start problem, and you get it in the shop and you go to crank it over. Now that it's in the shop, the ice is melted to water, and so you go to crank it and the water goes in the cylinders. Now, if you don't know what you're doing and you're persistent and you keep trying and you're boosting it and you're putting a jumper box on it and you're charging the battery and maybe replacing the starter, and you keep doing this, and each time you hydrolock it, you could be doing damage to the engine. Now, this car, I don't know why it's having a boost problem. Now, I did do a quick smoke check on this, looking for maybe a cracked intercooler or something that might have cracked due to the expansion of the water as it freezes, but I didn't find anything with the smoke check. So I'm a little bit worried that maybe ice passed through the engine into the turbo and damaged the vanes of the turbo, or maybe damaged the fins of the exhaust turbine on the turbo. So I don't know at this point, but customers want to take it to the dealership anyway. So for a shop, it's a little bit risky, because if you don't know what you're doing, you could start with an engine that simply cranks and don't start with no damage, and then thaw it out and have an engine that's damaged due to the hydrolock of the water going in the cylinder. If you learned anything from this video, be sure and click the like button. And if you want to donate to the continued production of these videos, visit my website at www.kansascitytdi.com and find the donate icon. If you want to watch some more of my videos, there should be one right here, and don't forget to subscribe.